Hey developer, you want to build powerful database backend in Java without writing tons of boilerplate code. You are in the right place. This is a modern way of building CRUD application API with a modern framework, Spring Boot. In this tutorial, I want to show you how you can build a Spring Boot app plus Spring JPA module. In this tutorial, we are going to learn a lot of things. We are going to set up a Spring project in minutes, creating the entities self student. We are going to test our API using Postman, and we are going to connect to a H2 database, and I'll show you how you can connect to other databases by the end of this tutorial. Let's dive into this tutorial. Either you are learning Spring, how to interact with Spring JPA, you are building your portfolio, you are new to the Spring framework. This is the right tutorial for you if you want to learn about connecting to database and manipulating your tables. So let's get started. For us to get started, we need to go to Spring Initializer. Just type start.spring.io. Then here we are now in the Spring Initializer, and you can put your package name here. Just say code with this. Since we want to work with Spring JPA and with all the advantage that I told you on the introduction, there are certain dependencies that we need to add. Let's add a JPA. This one, Spring JPA. We can add dependencies like in H2 if you want to store in the H2 database, and we can have many databases that you can interact. Postgres, Maria, MySQL, all these databases. And here I can add Spring Web because I want to create some interfaces so that we can create a student, we can save a student, do some queries in the database using Spring JPA. So we need just to have some APIs just for testing so that we understand better how these things works, right? And there's another favorite dependency that I love all the time. It's Lombok. We just add this. If you don't know Lombok, you see the advantages of Lombok while we are developing our application. So here I'll just say Spring JPA introduction. Right here I just say code with Bisq, and then I'll say JPA. So I'm just selecting Java 21. Why not to use 21 feature threads? And also packaging is jar, and I'm using Maven here. I love Maven. Some of you would want to use Gradle, and I'm using Java. Then I can generate the project. So I've downloaded this is the project. Let me open with my favorite IDE, which is IntelliJ. Okay, this is my project. I've opened my project with the IntelliJ. Some of you can use other IDEs like Eclipse, but I use IntelliJ. It's the one that I like the most, and it helped me in my development, especially in this world of AI. Their AI is better. So if I go to the POM XML here, you can see the group that I put and also the artifact. So there are dependencies that were added here, and we added JPA, and we also added the database that you're just going to use. It's an in-memory database. I'm not connecting to the actual database. So what I can do this and try to run this application and see if everything is working fine. So if you go to our main folder, there's nothing there, and the application is connected to the H2 database. Let's see, it's connecting to which database. You can see here it's connecting to the in-memory database. So it means our application is connected to an in-memory database, but we don't see what's really happening in our database. So far what you can do, we need just to create a student entity, and also we need to create an API to save a student. So what we can do here, what I usually do, I first create a new package called entity. So this entity is going to match our database table. So I can say entity here, and I can say repository. We are going to create a repository. So we want to manipulate this relational in-memory database, which is H2. So we create an entity just like a Java class that has information that we want to store to our database, and this information is going to map our database tables. So here I will create a new Java class, and this one I can just say student, right? And it's a normal Java class, as you can see, the normal class that we create every day, but we want to serve a student into our database. So what I can do, and the name of the database, if you are using this JPA, take note the name, you can just say add entity, right? If you add this annotation, it requires us to add an ID. So since I'm using IntelliJ, it will just give me and told me that you have to add an ID, but the ID that I prefer usually, it's a UUID, so I can just say string here. And here, since it's now an ID, and here you can say add generated value, and the generation type I can say UUID. I told you I like to use Lombok because this code, it's a boilerplate code. These days we just need to remove this and add a Lombok. We say please add a getter, so please add a setter. So and our class will look very smart. So if you want to create a table called students, and you don't want to have a table called student, and you want to call it students because this table is going to store students, there's this annotation that you can use that is called add table, and in the table, and the name of the table, you can now say the name of my table is called students. So this information will be stored in a table called students. Then a student can have a name, and a student can have, you know, a student can have a like student number. You can just say student number. And if you want to make this number, because every student must have a unique number, so each student must have a unique number, so you just say add column and you say unique true. So if you want to save a number which is already to assign to another student, the application will fail to save that number because you are putting a constraint in our table saying that this one is going to be unique in that table, right? I think you are now understanding this thing. Then this ID is just like a primary key. So it's being, if you save a new student, a new key is going to be, a new ID is going to be generated. And you don't need to specify the ID yourself. It will be generated automatically and saved into the database. Some of you can use also long here. Maybe what you are used is this long, and the generated value, you can change this to identity. It's still okay. It's your choice. Maybe you can use this long. It's still fine. You can keep it as it is right now. But I showed you how you can save IDs as UUID or save it as auto-incrementing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in our table. So by doing this, we can save a student as a name, and surname like last name. You can save a student name and last name. So what we need now to create a repository. So it's just in JPA, we are just creating an interface. You don't worry about how the implementation was done. Let's use the code that is already there by just creating a JPA repository. So here I'll come into the repository and I create an interface. Make sure here you click interface and I just says student repository like this, and here is supposed to extend JPA repository. Since this tutorial is for JPA, you can think of using JPA repository, and the repository, what the interface that we want to store a student into our table, and the ID, this one means the ID of our class is long, so that's why we put long here. So the next thing, let's create an interface to save this student, and I can create a new Java class and I can say student service. So in our student service, we can, for simplicity, we can just create service and implementation, but for me, let's just I just want to show you the implementation, not the best way of doing this. And I can say we would want to save. Let's start with save student. So if you want to save a student here, we need this student repository, because this is the one that is going to manage everything, the interaction to our database, how to save data, how to retrieve data. So I can just say student repository like this private student repository. And I'm using we want to inject this repository dependency injection. I can say a final, and here let's make our class at service, because we are now in the service. We need to create constructor dependency injection. So you can do this. You can see I have injected this class, and it means everything is working fine, and we are not going to get a null pointer exception when we're trying to save this one. So I can just say save. So say repository.save, it will create a new record into our table called students, and we have saved a new student. By calling this save, it's done. So the relationship between this student repository and student is being done to this JPA repository. So that's why this thing is going to work fine. So since I'm using Lombok, I don't want this one. I can come here and I can say it required as constructor. We are removing unnecessary code. So we can now save a new student. Let's now create an API for this one, and I can create a new package, and this package I can say API. In my API, I will call it student API. So in my student API, because we are going to use a Postman to save this data, so sending the request with Postman, we are sending this student as JSON, and we want to call this API via RESTful. So I can say at REST controller, and you are familiar with this REST controller, at request mapping. in my request mapping, I can call this one students. So of all of my API, after putting my port, it will be calling this students. So I will create now a post method. So I can just say public response entity, and I can say student, and I can say create. So here, let's try to do also dependency injection like what we did. I can just say add required ask constructor, and I can say private final student services, this one. Since because we are calling this, we want to call this method called student service, let's inject this student service using constructor dependence injection. That's what we did here. Send the here from here, we just say student service dot save student. But by doing this, it's just like a normal, as you can see, it's just a normal Java and the methods, but we didn't specify which type of method are we calling, because we are creating a new record. You can call it a post mapping. If you are creating a new record by standard, you can just say created, but I can see most of people, they just leave it like okay, but we can use the return a response code called created. So if a response code okay means 200, created means 201. So 201 usually when you are creating a new resource, but for now I can leave it like that. Or what I can do, you can come here, and I can come here and do this. And I can say HTTP status, and you can put the body here. I can just say the record which was saved here, and I can return this one. It's going to have an ID, something like this, and by doing this, a new record will be saved. So let's test our API using Postman. So what we need, you just need to restart this one, and I can enable this. So our application is started. You can see it's running on port 8080 and at this /. So what we can do, we just need to create a new student, and we just need to send these values only: name, last name, and student number. Let me open the Postman. So this is my Postman. What I can do, remember our method to create, it's called post, and it's under HTTP :, and it's localhost port 8080, and the API is called students. And let's go to the body, and we need to say row, and it's going to be a JSON. And here our name, it's going to be BISC, and our last name, and I think I can say RT5678. This is the student number. I think it's in quotes, and I can go back to here, and it's student number. So let's try to save our data by clicking send. As you can see, the data here, it means something is wrong because you're expecting to get an ID here, but you are not getting anything. Let's go to our API and fix that. So if you go to our API, it's because here we missed a request body. So we need to add request body, and let's test this again. So we can send another request again, but we can't see our real data right now, what we are doing wrong. So for us to test everything so that we know that we are doing correctly, we need to see the structure of our table and if there's anything being saved into our table. So what we can do here, let's go to our configurations in the application.properties. So here, these are the configurations that we need for when you are setting a database. So for data source, we are just saying we are using JDBC2, and here the driver, we are using the H2 driver. If you are using Postgres, you put the Postgres driver, and this is the username without any password. So if you are saving a record, you can see we just said this for JPA to show SQL, which is being called when you are saving record. You can see this was the last name and student number and the ID. So the ID is default because it's going to be generated. So if you go here below, we enable the H2 console and the path. So what I can do here, I can just say, let's copy this URL, and the name of our database is testdb. And you can put this URL in it's testdb. Let's test the connection. Let's connect now. And this is our students table. And let's run this and see if we have any data here. So after saving, we just got an ID one, but the last name is now, and the name is now a student number. A student number is now. Let's see what could be the issue. Since we added a request body, it means our getters and setters are not working fine for Lombok. Let's delete them and let's add generate getters and setters for all the properties, and do this and save again. And restart the application, and let's wait for the application to start. So let me send a request now. You can see everything's now working fine and this data has been saved. Let's go into our console and click this one. We need to connect again since we restarted the application, and go to the students, and we need to run. You can see the record has been added into our database and in the table called students. This is how you can integrate with H2 database. It's also similar with this database like Postgres. All of them, they are relational databases, and H2 is just we are saving into the memory. It's not a permanent. If you restart the application, all the data is lost. So we can use this one just for testing purposes and practicing. If you want to store them permanent, you need to have Postgres database running every time. So what we need to do, I want to show you how to get the item by ID. How do we achieve this? It's simple. Let's come to our project, and we can first go to our service, and we need to create, say, public, and we want to get the student by ID. Since our ID is long, because we are using a long to store this ID in this table, it's a long, so we need to send it as long. Then just say return. We say repository. In this repository for JPA, there's already a method called find by ID. So it will return an optional. So it will return an optional of students if the record exists, or else we can return a null. If the record does not exist, we can return a null. So let's create an API to get this. So it's simple here. Let's duplicate this. And here it's going to be a get mapping. We want to get a record, and here we just say get by ID, and here it's going to be a path variable and long ID, and from here we just say ID, and here we just say get student by ID, and we can just get an ID. And now when you are getting a record, it's now an OK. If the record is there, we can just return on OK. And let's restart this and see if we are going to get an item. So we can go to our Postman, we can copy this one and come here. It's going to be a get, and here we just say we want to get a record ID number 1. So if I send this record, it's returning empty because this record does not exist. Why it doesn't exist? Because I told you the database that we are using is an in-memory database. Every time we restart an application, it will clear everything. So we need to save this record first, and I can now get a record. You can see you can get the item by ID. So even if you go here and reload here and connect and go to students, you can see the record is only 1. So let's try to save the record which we already saved before. I can do this. You can see the application fails. The reason is that we told the application that this student number must be unique for every student. So if you go to our application, we can have things like unique constraints. So this is the things that you need to take note when you are developing your application. So here it's telling that unique index a key violation, and we know that the violation that we did is this one, which is the student number. So we already managed to do that. So what we need to do, we need also to delete a record which we already created. So here I can say delete, and here I can say delete mapping. Here I can say delete by ID, delete student by ID. If you are deleting a student, usually here it's I can say no content like this. You don't return anything, and it's a delete mapping, and I can create a method that we can use to delete. Since we are using this JPA, it's simple. We just say student repository dot delete by ID, and we can delete this by ID. The record will be deleted permanently. So this method is already defined in our Spring JPA. So let's restart the application. And we need to test the delete. So I just copy this API for get, and I can create here, and here we can change it to delete. So if I do this, let's save, because the application is now running again. And if I do this get, I can get a new record. You can see it's returned something. Let's delete it. If I do this, it has deleted, and you can return no content 204. If I do a get again, this record is no longer there. So we have tested creating, deleting, and getting. So you can also get all the items, all the students, if you want to get all the students in our database. So to create that API, I can do this. I can just say here get mapping, this one I can say get all, and I can say body, but it's okay, and I can say student service dot get all students. Let's create this method, which is get students. So here in our JPA, it's simple. We have student repository dot find all. It will return students, and here is supposed to be list of students. And here, let's change this to a list. And you can import the list from YouTube, and we can restart. So here in our Postman, let's copy this one, and it's a get. I did not put anything here. So if you just say students, it will return everything. If I run this API, let's see, because here we pass this thing and it's required, and I can remove this. Sorry for that, and let's test this. So I can send this. So far it's empty. So let's save our student. Let's save student number 2 with the student ID, another one, and I can do this. So if I do this and get all, we are going to have 2 students with the different student registration number. So if I want to delete student number 1, I can do this, and I come back to this delete, and I can get one record because the other student has been deleted. It's easy to do this with Spring JPA. We have managed to do the creating, the deleting, the getting. We need to implement the updating. So to implement update, it's easy. What you need to do, we just copy the method that we already created for post, this one, and you can come here, and here you just say update student. So if you are updating a record here, we just say put mapping, and let's put the path variable, which is an ID of the record that you want to update, and I can say add path variable long ID. So here I just say update student, and I'll pass also the ID. Then we can create this method. So since we have also our method to get, we need to look for the record if it exists. So I just say get by ID, and it will return a student. If this one is now, we can throw an exception because you want to update a record that does not exist. Student not found, we can throw an exception. Then we can now manipulate this student one that we got. We can set student name, we can set, so the student number does not change. So let's manipulate things that changes from this student. So from this student, what mostly change is first name and last name. Then we can update the record. We call that method save student. Is still work, but I can say repository dot save student one. We can save this student one, which we already find here, and here it's a put mapping. And let's test this again. So I can copy our post as it is, and here it's now a put, and I can copy this JSON, and I can go to body row, and for update I don't update the student number, and I can update the name. For now, let's just update the name to Biskinaf. So since it's now running, I can do this, create a record, right? It's ID1. So if I do this get to get all items, you can see it's Bisky, this one, and here I can just do this. We want to update the record of student ID1. So if I do this, you can see it returned with a new name. Here it was Bisc. Let's send again. It's now Bisc enough. So we have managed to perform all the CRUD of our student. From now on, you will now understand the basics of JPA, how to create, how to delete, how to get, and how to update a record with Spring JPA. We have learned how to configure your database in the configuration files, how to configure your database. It's either you are using Postgres or you are using MariaDB. For this example, we are using H2 database, and you can access that console using this URL, and the link is in the description on how to download this code on GitLab. And you have covered all the basics that you need to understand, and I can show you some of the things that you can also do with this JPA. Some of the basics things that you can do. You can write native queries in this JPA. You can count number of students this JPA. Let's have these examples. Let's write a native query to get the students by first name. What I can do, I can just say list, right, student. Let's import this. Say find all by, you can write this find all by first name, by name. We don't, the name is like first name, but here we don't have something like first name. It's going to be name. But if you want to do this and write a native query, we just say add query, right? And we just say select, and it's called student S. Sorry, we just say select S from student S, where S dot name is equal to, here we just say name. So we need to pass this value. How do I replace this value? I can replace it here. I just say add param, and here is the name. So this is the name that I'm passing here, which is first name. So let's say we are implementing your searching using these queries. It's also possible doing that. So let's go to the service. From the API that we copied this one, let's just copy it and fetch the records by first name. String by first name, here we just say find by first name, and we can pass this first name. Let's create an API for this, and for the API it's going to be a get. Here I can say add request param, and I can say name like this. Here I can just say first name. So find all by first name. This is the name of our API, and it's students. I can do this, and I can say search, and let's restart this, and I will copy our get API, this one, and I can create another one and paste it here, and just say / search, and here I'll just say first name equals to biscuit. So let's save a record here, and this is the first name, and let's search for the person with the first name. You can see if I put a record which does not exist, we are not going to get any record. So I showed you how to use the native queries, like the queries that we are using the add query. This is how simple it is to integrate and writing your native query languages in Spring JPA. So if you are new to this channel, may you kindly subscribe, click the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we upload new video. Let's meet on another video tutorial. Salut coders.